uh, there you go. Okay. Um, and uh, and we're grateful for that because then we can listen back and hear all of our mistakes. So, but in any event, I'm John Bringenberg. I'm about to introduce our panel. We're going to talk to you today about the programs that are available to nearly all of your projects that come from the utilities serving. We're going to show you the area in a little bit, and we very much, want to see all new construction take advantage of these new construction incentive programs. So that's what we're here to talk about. And let me grab the screen and we'll get rolling. Okay, and okay. All right, so we're able to see the presentation on your end because I see something a little weird on my side, but okay. All right, thank you. So this is the utility incentives for efficient new affordable housing. That is our webinar for today. And we have myself, I'll sort of moderate, and three other panelists here to share information with you about how these programs work in your markets. Our topics, we're going to go through these introductions. We're going to talk a little bit about how these programs work from a process overview. And then we're going to share a case study of an affordable housing project. And then there'll be, should be ample time for you to ask us questions and learn more about how this works and how to get enrolled. With that, from an introduction point of view, these are the folks on the call. I'm John Bringenberg. Our company, Willdan, actually provides these commercial incentive programs for utilities in about 24 states around the country. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few slides. But I do what we call outreach. I'm like a front end person, and I am trying to pay attention to new construction projects and do my best to get 100% of them enrolled in these incentive programs. So we're trying not to leave anybody out. And we also have, I'll go through the names and then we'll have each person talk a little bit about themselves. We have Alex, our overall program manager for our programs in Washington State. Amit Singh, who is with us from Puget Energy, and he manages this program. Allison Grinzel, who comes to us from Snohomish County PUD and handles the program there. Rob is a cohort of Allison's. He was not able to join us today, but Rob is very much out in the field, and for projects going on in Snohomish County, he's often one of the people that you bump into or have FaceTime with that utility. So let me proceed, and let me hand it off to Amit to just describe a little bit about Puget Sound Energy.
Hi, everyone. Excited to be here today. I know the HCC did some really great work in the region. So excited to be part of this panel. So PSE, as I'm sure many of you know, is a dual fuel utility. So we have gas and electric service. We have about 1.2 million electric customers and over 900,000 natural gas customers across Western Washington. And we kind of run along that I-5 corridor, kind of like up near Bellingham, down towards Olympia, and then over to Ellensburg. That's kind of like the region. And then some of those counties, we only offer gas, or some we only offer electric. So in this picture, the cream color is combined gas and electric. The green is where we only offer gas. and then the yellows where we only offer electric. And through CETA, the Clean Energy Transformation Act, we're committed to net zero energy by 2030 and 100% carbon-free energy by 2045. John, next slide, please.
Okay.
My department is called the Customer Energy Management Department. So we empower customers to reduce and shift their energy use. The shift their energy use has, become more prevalent in the past year or two through programs such as demand response, and I guess through programs mostly like demand response. We want to try to, even out the load on the grid so that we can have ensure cleaner resources on there. The core projects that we deploy in customer energy management are the deployment of the biennial conservation plan, and then demand response and target electrification. Those are kind of more recent programs that we employ. And then equity has always been an important component of customer energy management. Some of the programs where we especially focus on equity are small business direct install, and then multifamily programs, so multifamily retrofit and new construction. And then we work with agencies to offer programs like weatherization assistance for low-income customers as well. And then the program that I run is called Multifamily New Construction. It's a whole building performance approach, as Willdan will discuss today, and you get paid for each unit of energy saved. We do have affordable housing incentives that are 50% higher than our standard incentives. And our affordable housing definition aligns with the Washington State Housing Finance Commission's definition for the low-income housing tax credit.
Okay, thanks, Amit. And now I want to hand it off to Allison to talk a little bit about Snohomish PUD.
Great, thank you. As the name implies, we are the utility in Snohomish County. So we are just north of King County. So hopefully some of you also work in our county. So I feel a little bit like an interloper here on the King County side, but that's okay. We come to Snohomish County. We'd love to have you. We're the 12th largest public utility in the US, and we're the second largest public utility in Washington. We provide electrical service to 373,000 homes and businesses, and water to 23,000 homes. Next slide, John, please.
Okay.
So in addition to the program you're going to hear today, we have, kind of the standard utility incentives. We have a budget payment plan, bill assistance, online marketplace, project assistance, and then we align with PSC's 50% bonus for income qualified new construction. And again, we'll get into that a little bit later. And next slide, John.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I hope you weren't expecting something else there, Allison. Sorry about that.
I was, but that's okay. We can we can roll with it.
Yeah,
I'm
there's
good.
nothing more to explain. Otherwise, we'll go on to talk a little bit about how this program looks and works in your market and for your project. Okay, so we've looked at this map a slightly different way, but this is the same map that Amit showed a little bit earlier. With it's most of the color areas represent Puget Sound Energy, either electric service, gas service, or combined service. And then you see clearly the Snohomish County footprint in there. And some projects are mutual between Snohomish for electricity and PSE for gas. Anyway, all of these areas are generally eligible for these incentive programs, with two important exceptions. We currently do not have Seattle City Light using this same new construction program in Washington here. And we also don't have Tacoma using the same program. Now, I'll just say that Willdan is working hard to try to get Seattle to adopt this program so that the whole region is using the same program. That may or may not happen, but we're earnestly working on that, and hopeful that in time the whole region will be using the same program. And I mentioned that we do this around the country in about 24 states for utilities, and we've been doing it for more than 20 years. So we have a lot of experience in managing these complex energy modeling based incentive programs for new commercial construction. And however, having said that, we're relatively new in Washington State, where we've been with SNOPUD for about 2 years, and we've just finished our first year with Puget Sound Energy. So in the state of Washington, we are kind of rolling out our program and getting to meet the market. So we're happy to have everybody on the call here from the affordable housing community, so we can do our best to try to meet you. So let me just take you through a quick introduction of how the program works, and I'm going to hand it over to Alex for the next slide here.
Yeah. So what is the Design Assistance Program? Energy Design Assistance, EDA, as we like to refer to it. Our program provides some free analysis of differing energy efficiency options. We're going to talk to you about potential savings for a whole list of options for your building. We're going to talk about the grants and incentives available based on those savings. And we're really focused on the new construction major alteration side of things. So our goal with this program is to drive low energy outcomes for buildings and projects that wouldn't have otherwise been able to pursue those strategies. Affordable housing is a good one there, because you guys generally have good goals and tight budgets, and that's where we want to be able to help. And then as a state, we want to help realize Washington State's goals for overall clean energy to benefit everyone. So before I hand it back, and we'll go into more details on the program in a minute, why participate? Well, one, we're going to give you that complementary energy modeling. We're going to help you find energy saving opportunities. We're also going to give you an analysis of what your energy cost savings could be and what the payback are for various options in front of you in terms of what makes the most sense for your project. And we'll bundle that all up with financial incentives, grants from both the utilities here today, so that you have everything all together to help make your decisions. We're going to help you lower costs for both the tenants and the house meter all at once, and hopefully help fund some additional or some improvements to affordable housing projects. So with that, some quick notes on eligibility. We've said it several times, we are focused on new construction projects. We have some flexibility for existing properties if they're doing major retrofit and coming up to current code standards. We are targeting projects in design phase, and this actually ties in to the exemplary building program's early iterative design. Design phase is when you have the most flexibility and when our work can be the most useful to you. That is a requirement to enroll for SNOPUD and will be a requirement to enroll for PSE, although we still have some flexibility there. We'd rather have you than not. So if you're at all unsure, let us know, we'll sort it out.
Okay.
That quick intro, I'll pass it back to John to talk a little bit more detailed about our program.
Yeah, so the next couple of slides will talk about the nuts and bolts or the mechanics of what you do if you have a project, and this will talk about how to get it enrolled, and then what to expect, and what the process looks like. I will say, because I think it's worth repeating and maybe more than twice, is that this is a complementary program. So you get very sophisticated energy modeling from our participating utilities here. But it doesn't bring cost to your project. We do bring money to your project, but we don't bring cost. And so this is and in healthcare, they call it informed decision-making. So what we're really trying to do is to collaborate with you, collaborate with your energy teams if they're already in place, if you have MEP contractors. It's a collaboration, and we will be bringing this sophisticated energy modeling that you won't be paying for, but it'll help you make informed decisions about energy choices that you may or may not be considering that will be useful for the life of that building. We use a full-fledged energy modeling software that we've developed in-house. It's streamlined because the purpose of our modeling is to get a picture of the whole building and then translate that into what's an appropriate incentive for that building. So it's somewhat more streamlined than energy modeling that might be done by teams that are under your contract, but it is supportive and collaborative and generally reinforcing to whatever you're already working with there. And this is just a quick snapshot. We'll have a little bit more on this a little later, but when we bring our modeling information back to you, one of the ways over the years that we've learned to streamline our process and try to simplify our process is we will bring back the results of this energy modeling in the form of 3 baskets of solutions, and you can think of it as good, better, best. And so it greatly simplifies having you try to decipher a lot of information. And well, let me just go on from there. So we try to do our best to simplify what is an otherwise fairly complex process. And I'm just going to take a couple of slides here to explain the actual process. So the first slide here is about the timing of it. Alex already mentioned this, but it's worth mentioning again that, and by the way, this will become obvious the first time you go through one of these projects, is that this energy design assistance, or EDA as we call it, it works best when we get involved during the schematic or design development phase of your project. And it starts to be a lot less effective if we, and that's in this phase here. It gets a lot less useful for everybody if we get involved while you're doing construction documents or bidding. And once the project has started construction, then we have to assume that there's no longer any flexibility to consider alternatives in the energy design. And so the program makes no sense at all at that point. So the big takeaway here is that we want to get involved in your projects early, and during design is the best time. And it'll be obvious to you once you go through one of these that that's the case. And then, because we've been doing this a long time, we've been able to refine the steps in the process and try to minimize the amount of time and energy or resources that we need from you and your architects and your design teams in order to get the job done. So we very much try to get in and out of our process with you. And we have boiled it down to these 5 major steps. And out of these 5 major steps, we really only need your help and support for the first 3. The last 2 steps are steps that we take as part of completing the program. So 5 steps. The first step is really simple. It's just to go to a link to an online form and complete some basic high-level information to enroll a project. And once that's done, that should only take about 15 minutes, by the way. Once that's done, then the project becomes visible to us and to our teams. And we then will organize, first off, we'll come back and ask for any information we still need, ask for any, plan drawings and other things that might be available to us. So we're basically going to gather information after enrollment so that we can organize what we call an intro meeting, which is our second step, but it's our first meeting. Now, this meeting typically doesn't last more than an hour or an hour and a half. It's a virtual meeting, and it happens usually about 3-4 weeks or so after this enrollment step here. And in this intro meeting, this is just a time for your teams to meet us, for us to meet your teams. It's always important in this to have the client, the architect, and any engineering design teams that might be in place. Those folks are important to be in this meeting. It makes the process just go more smoothly. But basically in this meeting, we'll learn if there are any funding constraints or zoning issues or certification goals, things of that nature. And this gives us enough information in this meeting to be able to run our modeling and come back 2 or 3 weeks later with the results of our modeling process. And we call that our results meeting. So now we're on the third step. It's our second meeting. Again, it's a virtual meeting. And this meeting probably is not going to take more than an hour or an hour and a half as well. And in this meeting, we're going to go back. We showed this a little earlier, but we're going to present the results of modeling your project. And you will see the results in the form of like 3 baskets of design solutions. And you can think of it as good, better, best. And those are not rigid baskets. What actually happens in this meeting, it's kind of like a live charrette. So quite often what will happen is you'll tell us, well, we're already doing these 4 things, so let's make sure they stay in. But let's see what happens if we take this high performance measure from the best basket and move it down into the better basket. And, you basically do that for an hour. And we basically take all those ideas that have been modeled, and we kind of make a special recipe for your building that is a mix and match of those things that make sense for your budget, for your project, for all the realities of your project. And so basically at the end of this step 3, there's usually some pretty good sense of what the energy design should be for the building. And at that point, we make a record of it. And unless you need us, we don't really need to do anything further until the project is construction complete. And then we get to step 4, where we do a verification at the site, and we'll compare the as-built with the design plan that was put forward early in planning, and just make note of any changes, any, basically the as-built design. And then one of the things that's kind of invisible, but it's really important, is that we'll handle all the complicated paperwork, which we actually do at every step here. But the verification report, to turn that into a grant application that the utility can respond to, and there's a lot of paperwork there. So we handle all of that for you, and we'll turn that verification report into a check that goes back to the developer, and that completes the 5 steps. So there's going to be plenty of time for questions here, and so let me just press ahead, and that's basically how we've tried to simplify the process. And so now I want to hand it back to Alex for essentially the last piece of our presentation, to talk about a case study. And then we want to have you provide any questions or any ideas, or talk to us about projects you might have or anything like that that we can have as a discussion to finish out the rest of the presentation. So handing it off to Alex here.
Sorry, unmute myself. All right, I was worried I hadn't prepared quite enough, but as we're to the second half of the hour and we want to leave you some time to talk to us here at the end, I'll try to proceed through this at a decent clip. So this is an imaginary building, as you can tell from the photo on the right, a generic multifamily building, courtesy of stock images. I have scaled it to be 100,000 square foot just for ease of mental math. And based on a collection of projects we've seen enrolled over the past couple of years, we're looking at 85,000 square feet of that for apartments, 10,000 square feet of that for commons and corridors, and a little north of 4,000 square feet of that for garage, which may or may not have on a project. We're also looking at 100 units because that fits reasonably well in that space and gives us, again, easy mental math, 5 stories. It's located in climate zone 4C, and we're pulling hourly weather data from the Boeing field weather logs, typical meteorological year 3, if you want to Google it. So when we're looking at these projects, the first thing we want to ask ourselves is, where is energy being used? So this is that building with what we see is still unsurprisingly pretty standard for multifamily in the area, electric resistance heating in the apartments, heat pumps to serve the common spaces, and ventilation is needed for the garage. Based on that simple building layout and those system selections, we can get an idea what the energy use in the building is. Roughly 30% of that is going to interior equipment. There's not a whole lot we can do to regulate interior equipment, but it is worth noting. We see about 10% going towards interior lighting. That we have some pretty easy control over. We can adjust lighting powers relatively well, but it's a 10% slice of the pie. 27, nearly 30% goes to your domestic water heating. So there we see some significant savings opportunities. That's a big piece of the puzzle there. We also see nearly a quarter going to fan power. I'm not going to talk a lot about fan power today, but again, another plug for the exemplary building program. There's some good guides there on ventilation and fan power. So I would encourage you to look into it. We see a little bit of cooling load from our heat pumps cooling our common spaces. And the remainder, the last 7%, is our heating load, primarily for our apartments, so the bulk of the space. So it gives you a good idea where things are sitting. The big things to take away from here are your big 3 loads here: interior equipment, domestic water, fans. As a quick departure from our test case, we'll talk a little bit about transitioning to PTHP, a package terminal heat pump, just to give a demo of what the impacts are of switching from that electric resistance into a heat pump. Interestingly, and this is a little awkward on our part, but moving to that heat pump does show some additional energy use, because now you're cooling your spaces, which is great for the residents, and I think is going to be needed moving forward, but is going to add some additional load. So that's where we can help you try to mitigate that and keep that energy use where it should be. The big thing I want to call out here is if you look towards the bottom, you'll see that cooling accounts for not quite 10%, probably 8% of the energy cost for the building, with heating being roughly half of that down at the bottom there. So the cooling loads are really dominating once you add that heat pump in. That means emphasizing cooling efficiencies, and that means a new little game when it comes to selecting your glazing of where's our balance point on our solar heat gain. I'm not going to talk at length about that, but that's something we can help you with if you want to enroll in the program. So that's our baseline. Those are based off of a minimally code compliant building as described. How are we going to improve upon that? So I see a question. We'll come back to that later. So I'm going to show you some numbers here in a minute, and it's going to be a lot of numbers. So I'll talk through it. But first, a little intro into where those numbers came from. We looked at what we had for projects enrolled, and we looked at what they were doing for everything you're going to see presented. And we looked at what was typical, and we looked at what was not typical, but commonly done. So if we look at lighting power, we typically see projects targeting a 30% reduction. It doesn't quite align with your energy code credits, but I can see why you would target that. That's where most projects end up. That said, we see a nice little distribution beyond that with a second peak at 60%. And that's really where we'd like to be making the difference here. We want to take you from what most things are doing to a step further, making things a little cheaper on your residents, making your buildings a little more efficient, and reducing the grid impacts a bit. With that said, I'm going to move on to kind of a mini bundling. I see Allison's eyes go wide there. Yes, this is a lot of numbers. So looking at what people typically do, I kind of arrayed out 3 bundles of performance. And if you were enrolled in the program with your own project, we would dial these into whatever targets you want to pursue. For this exercise, we're sticking to the standards. So bundle 1 is based off of what our most commonly selected items are. We're looking at R20 walls, R50 wall robes, and decent glazing, U value 0.28, low solar heat gain, which is critical not for energy usage, but for comfort when you're talking about heating only spaces. On the mechanical side, we're still looking at that electric resistance heating and Energy Star rated ventilation. That's going to be reducing that fan power somewhat, but not hugely. That's an area where we have room for improvement, and that's where I would ask you to come talk to us. On the lighting side, we're sticking to that 30%. Mostly, I've translated, rather than percentages, just the most common watts per square foot for these spaces. 0.43 apartments, 0.29 commons, 0.10 garage. Minimal influence on the plug load, but you're almost certainly putting in a refrigerator. And if you're putting in a refrigerator, it's almost certainly Energy Star rated. So we're putting that in there. Your water heating, we're going electric resistance. We're moving away from gas a little bit here, but we're not spending a lot of money to do so. As you might expect for a perfectly average building, it's pretty much at code level performance. If you do everything that is typically done, that's where you're going to end up. And unfortunately, that's going to be hard to incentivize because you're doing the norm. So let's see what we can do to improve on that. We'll move over to bundle 2. We're going to keep the architectural because we don't see a lot of improvement there usually. It's possible, and it's something that has significant long-term impact because the envelope is going to be around the longest of probably anything in your building. But it's not an area where we see people improving a lot. We're going to leave our mechanical system the same because that means we can make a solid apples to apples comparison here. If I were to switch you to heat pump suddenly, we'd be looking at all sorts of different numbers. And we're going to keep that Energy Star rated ventilation. On the lighting, we're going to drop targets down because that's pretty easily and commonly done. Going to 3.2, 0.25, 0.06 for our 3 spaces. Plug load, I mentioned earlier, that's a big energy use. There's not a lot we can do to affect it, but one thing we can do is look at appliances. So for this particular project, they're looking at Energy Star rated laundry, dishwasher, refrigerator. That's going to help reduce that 30% plug load use in the building. But we are sticking with electric resistance heating. So if we do all of that, where do we end up? About 5% energy savings. about $4,000 year in, year out. That theoretically would translate to a $16,000 incentive at both PSC and SNOPUD's incentive rate of 45 cents per kWh saved. But there's a caveat there. Really, with these programs, we're targeting 10% savings. Now, being affordable housing projects, we'll still work with you. We don't want to kick you out and make things too hard, but this is really kind of the bottom end of where we can work from you, if at all, work with you, if at all. So, all right, let's target the big dollar items. What can we target among those big dollar items? Well, I'm going to take back all of our other expenses. We're going to roll back to bundle one. We're going to stick with the R20 walls, R50 roofs. We're skip over glazing. I'll come back to that in a second. Same mechanical system. We're doing the same lighting as we were originally talking about. We're not going to spend for more efficient fixtures. We're going to eliminate the plug load control we were doing. We're not going to spend on the dishwasher, the laundry. But we are going to go to heat pump water heater because that has a big impact on a large chunk of our load. That's our big fish. By just adding that heat pump water heater, immediately we're seeing large and, in fact, maxed out incentives because we can't pay you more than the system cost in incentive. That said, we wrap everything all up. So I'm going to loop back to the glazing now and say, not only did that heat pump water heater fund itself, at that point, you can tack on triple pane glazing, which is that low 0.19 U value, which I know is a hot button issue in the upcoming code updates. And you still end up at a very low payback and at a very substantial incentive for the building as a whole. That gets you to 20% energy savings overall. That'll be $20,000 year in, year out on a 100,000 square foot building. So you're saving about 20 cents per square foot year in, year out. And those savings are shared between the owner, the tenants, everyone involved in the building. So that's a quick overview, and that was me picking the numbers. We want you to pick those numbers, but I can't do that for everyone on this call. So if you do have a project in mind, please come to us. We want to work with you. Before I hand it off for questions, I'm going to run through some quick tips and tricks for the program. We call it incentive hacks. 1, put light fixtures in. If you're not lighting the space, we can't incentivize you for lighting the space. If the tenant's bringing in their own lighting, we don't know what it is, we can't provide incentives. Similarly, in-unit laundry is eligible for incentives. Shared laundry is not. That's a matter of the difference between residential equipment and commercial equipment when it comes to efficiencies and rating conditions. So right now, if you are doing in-unit laundry, you're looking at adding that as a additional luxury for your tenants. We might not move the needle to pay for the appliances, but we'll help that cost benefit and help you provide a little better quality of life for your tenants. And my final tip and trick when you're going through this exercise is we're going to present a lot of information. We do not want you to get lost in choices. We'll talk about, this bundle, that set of strategies. None of those are things we are going to enforce. We're not code officials. We do want you to pick realistic targets, and we want you to achieve those targets, but we do not want to be adding stress to your process. So when we come to you at the end of the process, end of the program, and say, hey, what do you want to do? Pick a target. Don't agonize over the decision. That'll help us all move forward and help us all get the best experience out of this. So as a quick little extend, 2021 code is a hot button issue. So a quick overview on what we see for impacts to our program right now. Looking at the improved glazing requirements, we're probably going to see glazing incentives drop by about 50%, but those glazing items are only about 5% of the incentive on an average project. So you're only looking at about a 2.5% difference overall across the program and project as a whole. We're seeing that heat pump water heaters will likely be required. Makes sense, as I just stated, they're a pretty no-brainer item. They do have some adoption concerns, and that's, I think, what the code is driving here, is to improve adoption. So we're looking to find room for incentives beyond code for these systems so that we can help soften that transition point for you. And as a flip side caveat of that, as they increase requirements elsewhere, they're getting a little looser other places. Right now, we see the C406 requirements as a little bit eased from our program perspective. Maybe not practically on your end, but in terms of what the incentive impacts are, they'll ease off a little bit. So I think overall, you'll see similar or better results enrolling in our program moving forward. Please, please let us help you.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Alex. And that takes us to the end of the information we prepared to share with you. But this would be a good time for any questions, and if you can chime in, or there may be some chat questions. So
yeah, I see one from Eric. Heating costs typically less than 5% of energy costs. I'll just say it depends on the building. This is looking at one particular building in one particular scenario. But if you build a very efficient building, often as we transition in your temperate climate, you're not looking at heating costs so much as you're looking at ventilation costs. The fan power there is really what's driving your overall HVAC system costs. At least that's what we're seeing right now.
I would also, Allison and Amit, if you have anything you would add or embellish on what you've this would be a good time for that as well. Yeah, other thoughts or questions?
I just wanted to say, this is Allison at Snowped. We, as John mentioned, we've had this program running for about 2 years, and we've had really positive feedback from people. So I know, it may look like, oh my gosh, it's this big thing, it's this design thing, it's this, you're going to remodel my building, oh my gosh. But in reality, it's usually less than 2 hours of your time in meetings, and it is very helpful. And even if you have a building that's maybe too far along right now, going through the process can help you for the design of your next building. Like, wow, I had no idea that there was such savings to be had in an elevator, or like Alex mentioned, the appliances. So don't be intimidated thinking that this is a big, huge, horrible lift. It's really not.
I'm wondering what passive house grade windows might do at like 0.14 U value.
Yeah, let me, I'm actually taking a look at that right now, because I've got the model I pulled this info from, and I can make some quick tweaks. So let me take a look. So yeah, I'm seeing not exactly those windows. We're looking at, I think, U value of 0.19, not quite there, but that's where we can go off a quick update. And a solar heat gain of 0.24. We're looking at cutting heating costs by roughly 30% with that change.
Okay.
So it has a substantial impact. That said, I'll note again, that's a long-term impact, which is beneficial, but it's a smaller chunk of the pie. So that's the trade-offs you're going to run into.
Sure. Well, we've been bringing in Polish windows for the last 6 years, and they have much better U values, and it's only about 15% more than double pane to go triple pane passive to 0.14. And I think that should be looked at. I know they're newer to our market, but there are already 60, 70 projects in the Northwest and Washington, Oregon in place with Polish windows. Of those, it's probably about 15, 20% that have gone triple pane, probably about 5% that have gone passive. So just want you to know that there's a shift going on in the marketplace.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear.
All right.
Who would I chat with to talk more about this?
That would be Alex, really, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
We've got another number of people on our team that would be happy to chat with you on it. I'll also note that if you come in with a project and say this is our goal, then we'll align our analysis with that goal. So we'll be able to look at it.
Okay. Yeah, we work very early on with projects. So yeah, just let me know how to contact you.
Yeah. I'll drop my email in the chat here real quick.
Thank you.
Yeah, one question I would throw out that maybe Amit and Allison can respond to. We often get questions about this looks like a program. I mean, we're providing a pretty expensive service, I guess, that's complementary to these developers, and then we're also, putting incentive money at play. Where does all that money come from? Maybe Amit and Allison, you could help us with that.
Sure, I can help with that. So basically, energy efficiency is compared to like power plants, and I mean, ultimately, customers pay for it as a charge on customers' bills to enact energy efficiency. But it's put on the same energy efficiency as a resource is put on the same playing field as like a power plant. So it's, a lot of times it's cheaper to put money into programs to make buildings and homes more energy efficient than to build a new power plant. So it's just it's a more cost competitive and environmentally friendly way to lessen the load on the grid.
Yeah, thanks, Amit. Allison, anything you'd add there, or?
No, I think Amit got it just right.
Okay. That's very helpful. Thanks. Other thoughts or questions?
I guess I'll just put a plug in for the heat pump water heaters. I know that we've been seeing some pretty substantial incentives for that technology, for the past year or two in various projects. Yeah, and I just feel like there's, it's really taken some traction in the region. So, Alex kind of alluded to it. There's really good incentives that make it almost a no-brainer. Yeah, I think they're a huge energy saver, and a really, not that, a good technology for projects to potentially take advantage of for a pretty big incentive.
For Alex, Alex, despite we've been in the market just about 2 years, I think we've probably got maybe a dozen affordable housing projects that are either through the process or in the process. And I said earlier, and I want to convey that this is an inclusive program. It's not exclusive. In other words, we're not picking and choosing projects. We really would like to see every new construction project registered. But that especially is important for the affordable housing community, because if there's anything we can do to help, we know that every bit of help is important. But anyway, I think we've gotten some of these through the program, and I know there's some currently in the program. Any takeaways from your point of view, Alex, about how they're going?
I think they're going well. I will particular call out that when with both SNOPUD and PSE making the commitment to that extra 50% incentive bump, I've seen a lot of projects that makes the difference between something that is maybe viable and, oh, this incentive means we can actually make sense of doing this, and that is nice to see. So there's some extra potential there that is able to push the needle a little bit.
Good.
Justin has a fun one. I didn't get into the details of incentive rates previously, but Justin's asking, do PSE and SNOPUD have incentives for battery storage on new projects to help reduce load on the network? And Allison, Amit, if you guys want to pop in there with anything, feel free. Otherwise, Allison, I might segue into a more complicated topic.
I don't think PSE has battery incentives quite yet, but I think that is one of the products that we're working on. There's a lot of different solutions to kind of having more renewables in the grid, right? There's demand response, batteries. We just rolled out electric vehicle incentives for multifamily new construction. But yeah, I think battery incentives are coming, but they're not quite there yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I believe that it's the same for SNOPUD. I was trying to look on our website real quick. It's not really my area, but I will try to take a look and get back to you.
Yep. And I'll use that to segue. Both PSE and SNOPUD share the same incentive rate of 45 cents per kWh. In addition to that, there's the 50% bonus, but also on the Puget Sound Energy side, there is a gas incentive, as they are also a gas utility, of $7.50 per therm saved. On Snohomish County PUD, John, I can see your email.
Oh, sorry about that.
Sorry to call you out like that, but
no, thank you.
On the Snohomish County PUD side, they're actually rolling out a demand reduction incentive. So how we would interface with battery storage would be to be determined, but we are able to incentivize you to move load away from peak hours that SNOPUD has identified. And the details, that gets complicated to discuss, but if you have a question, come to me and I'll be happy to talk to you about it more offline. We have another question here on load managed EV charging. That one I know there's some answers to, so I'll just step back.
For SNOPUD, we have for residents, so it'd be like a house or maybe even a small townhouse. I believe it's $200 for managed EV charging. The number just changed, so I think it's 200. I do know this one for multifamily new construction and commercial, it is $500 per port, up to 10 ports. And they have to be on the registered, managed charging, which is essentially just Energy Star.
Great. Okay.
And with PSE, there's a kind of an application process, and they will evaluate the project to based on a number of criteria. I guess it's not quite as cut and dry as SNOPUD incentives, but there are incentives, but it's kind of more on a project by project basis based on a couple different criteria.
Okay. Yeah, other thoughts or questions as we wrap up here? Well, we all thanks everybody for joining us today, and I hope you join other important webinars and events that HDC has lined up for this week. I'll be looking at the calendar myself and trying to join in on some others as well. So we appreciate everybody joining us today, and appreciate our panel for making themselves available, and we're here to help. And so we hope to hear from you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great sunny day.
Okay.